Today marks 30 years since the start of the first Intifada, the armed Palestinian uprising against Israeli occupation. The peace process over those next 3 decades has made very little progress. With Palestinians now calling for a new Intifada, it seems the conflict could be back at ground zero, as RTs Nadira Tudor explains.
The events of the last few days in Israel have brought us back to a time when you couldn't turn on the news without hearing about the Intifada, an armed resistance against Israeli occupation.
Another outbreak of violence in the Israeli-occupied West Bank and the Gaza Strip.
The first Intifada was triggered by a collision between an IDF truck and a Palestinian car. 4 Palestinian civilians were killed, and all hell broke loose. Even before then, political leaders had puzzled over ways to resolve the region's problems. By 1993, they managed to broker a set of agreements between Israel and Palestine, launching the so-called Oslo process, a supposed roadmap to peace. The following year, Israeli leaders Yitzhak Rabin and Shimon Peres, as well as Palestinian President Yasser Arafat, were awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. In 2000, Bill Clinton brought together the two sides once again at a summit at Camp David. No agreement came out of that. The faltering peace process was derailed when former Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon visited Temple Mount in Jerusalem. That enraged the Palestinians, who considered the site to be Islam's 3rd holiest place. That's when the second Intifada began. It lasted 5 years.
The Palestinian question was pushed down a little bit by some other events in the area, especially after the occupation of Iraq and the issue of Afghanistan, and then all the other things, and then by the beginning of the second part of the Arab revolutions in 6 Arab countries.
In 2001 came 9/11, the worst terror attack in US history. That completely refocused global media attention away from the Israel-Palestine conflict to return only intermittently when the violence flared up. Fast forward to 2017.
Therefore, I have determined that it is time to officially recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel.
Israel and Palestine are suddenly back on the agenda. The world is in shock. The US is falling out with its allies.
C'est une décision regrettable.
This is a regrettable decision which France does not approve of and which contradicts international law.
The announcement has the potential to send us backwards to even darker times than the ones we are already living in.
The streets of Jerusalem and across the West Bank are on fire. Hamas has warned that Trump's decision has opened the gates of hell. Locals and US missions across the region are bracing themselves for violence.
All of this need not have happened. There was no real need for Trump to come up with this declaration, which perhaps he himself does not even understand the meaning of. During biblical times, we had 2 different kingdoms, Judah and Israel. Jerusalem was in Judah, which is no longer with us. Apparently, he did it out of some political and egotistical motives, which Israel and the Palestinians are going to pay the price for.
The 9th of December, 2017, marks 30 years since the start of the first Intifada. Are we now back to square one? Nadira Tudor, RT.